We're going to talk to you about all things elections processes and how you can come in and observe what the expectations are, and the various things you're going to see, as well as help you understand the processes. So when you come in, kind of know what you're looking at, where you're at. So first things first, my name is Duncan Clausen. I'm the Elections and Voter Outreach Specialist. I also have Matthew Pangburn with me today, the Elections Manager. So he'll be taking over a couple of sections of the slides here today. But if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A. We will work to answer them as we go through the presentation. If it seems like it's an urgent question and helpful to answer really right at that point in time, we might also let you know that there's more information coming up in the presentation, and just to kind of hang tight and then answer that question when it's appropriate in the presentation. But we also have built in plenty of time at the end of the presentation to get in some good Q&A. We oftentimes have a lot of questions, especially for people that are new to this observer information session or have not previously observed our elections. So some housekeeping. This is a Zoom presentation. So all the participants are muted, so we do ask that you use the Q&A feature to ask questions, and we'll work to answer those live speaking to you, although we may type some answers as well. Once a question has been answered with a text response, they should be visible to all the participants. And then I also like to share that we do have an observer roster. So signing into the presentation today puts your name on the roster for the 2024 elections. Really all that is if we are flooded with observers and we end up being space constrained, by attending this session, you have a priority to observe our processes versus those who have not attended the observer information session. So first thing I want to ask folks, go into my extras here. I'm going to share with you a little poll here. So I hope you can see this. I'm not seeing it on my screen, but this is our first question of, have you observed the elections process before? And by the way, these are anonymous. People aren't going to know how you answer, so feel free. No wrong answers. All right. Thank you, Matthew. I'm glad that that's working. I'm seeing the responses come in. We got a good number of replies already, responses. So awesome. I'm really excited. I always love to have people come back and participate in this, if you've observed the elections process before. But it's even more exciting to see new folks joining us to learn about what we do and how you can come and observe what we do. So thank you all for sharing that. That's really helpful. Here, I can share that result for you. We're about 30% have been here before, 70% have not. So I hope you like what we have to share today. I will include a survey after this. Well, let me start over. I will share an email out to all of the participants. So we'll include a survey. I'd love to get your feedback. We're always looking for ways to improve. I'll include a PDF version of these slides, so you'll have those available as well. And while this is a virtual meeting and we are open for observation, we also are setting up some tours. So I have a bookings page through our Microsoft tools where you can reserve kind of a date and time and meet with me primarily, but we do have other folks in the office as well that can actually give a tour, kind of walk you around that space. But as we go through the presentation today, I'll be showing you photos of our processing areas. We can talk more about that as we go through. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to get through our introduction, which we have already done. We're going to talk about our mission here at the Snohomish County Elections Division, go through some Snohomish County facts, the rules for observers, various elections activities, and some observer opportunities. So our mission here at Snohomish County Elections is to conduct fair, accountable elections and encourage people to understand and participate in the voting process. So what do we mean by fair? Well, we want to have accurate, impartial, and accessible elections. Accessible meaning available for all folks despite your level of ability. If you have a hearing impairment, we want to make sure that you can read what we have to share with you. If you have a visual disability, we want to make sure that there's an audio version of our ballot available for you so that you can participate in an accessible way. When we say accountable, we mean secure, transparent, and efficient. Being a vote by mail state, there's a lot of paper handling, as you'll see when we talk about this process in more detail going forward. And being efficient is critical to ensuring that we can provide those accurate elections results in a timely manner. So a little bit about our elections. Here in Snohomish County, we have a total population from 0 to 100 plus years old. Folks, we have 140,000 or so, according to the most recent US Census. We have just over 500,000 registered voters, and that number shifts daily. We always have voters moving in and out of the county, in and out of the state, individuals turning 18 every single day. So that's the number from earlier this month. If you went to look at our current voter registration totals, that would be a different number today. Here in the elections division, we have 12 full-time staff. And during this election year, we will hire more than 90 seasonals to help us process all the ballots, collect ballots from the drop boxes, do our signature verification and all those processes. And we maintain 119 different districts, and that doesn't include the PCOs, which is the precinct committee officers. And there's space for one precinct committee officer from each party for every precinct in the county. We have over 800 precincts in Snohomish County. So if you want more information on how to be a precinct committee officer, go ahead and reach out to your local political party of choice, and they can give you more information on how to become a PCO and kind of what that entails. One thing I like to break down, though, which is really interesting, because I think we're doing a fantastic job here in Snohomish County of registering voters. Again, our population, just over 100,000, or just over 800,000. That number varies depending, again, on which day you're looking at. There's 1 year and 5 year updates to the census. Our voting age population, that's folks that are 18 and older. There's just over 600,000 individuals that are over the age of 18. However, our citizen voting age population is just shy of 600,000 individuals here in Snohomish County. And the total number of registered voters that we have, just a little over 500,000. But of the eligible citizen voting age population, we're at 88, almost 88.5% saturation. So of everybody that's eligible to register and participate, you know, we're doing a really good job of registering them, ensuring that they have the ability to participate in our elections. So maintaining an accurate voter registration database is important to our elections, and it's a never-ending process. Approximately 20% of registered voters move each year. So that could be to a new address within Snohomish County, or in and out of the county, or in and out of Washington State. But the vast majority of new voter registrations and voter registration updates come through the Department of Licensing. However, we also routinely check obituaries in the local papers. We receive reports from the post office on undeliverable mail. We also get information from vital statistics about deceased voters, as well as receive notice from other counties and states about potential voters who have moved states and registered there. And finally, one of the tools we use particularly across states is ERIC. Now, ERIC might sound just like a cool guy, but it stands for the Electronic Registration Information Center. And ERIC was actually initially created by 7 states, and it is controlled by the member states. It's not a third party that runs it. The member states securely submit voter registration and motor vehicle department data to ERIC. And then ERIC is also certified to use official death data from the Social Security Administration. And they also subscribe to the change of address data from the United States Postal Service. So utilizing all 4 of these data sources, ERIC's able to provide its members, like Washington State, with reports to identify inaccurate or out-of-date voter registration records, deceased voters, individuals who appear to be ineligible, or those that are eligible to vote but are not currently registered. Some folks may be aware there's been some national partisan commentary about ERIC. However, we really feel that ERIC is a vital tool to support accurate voter rolls and to identify illegal voting. So the more states that participate, the better all of the member states' data is. I think it's a really important tool. And nice quote here from Secretary Hobbs. All right, I'm actually going to skip through the turnout for this year because I'm a little bit behind schedule for myself. We're going to jump right into the observer program. So election observers play a critical role in ensuring that our voting and elections process is conducted fairly and transparently, and that we also feel it really promotes trust in our democratic process. Observers may notify our team of deviations from standard operating procedure or electoral law, and that enhances accountability in our process. However, election observers must also refrain from interfering in the voting or electoral process to avoid disruptions or any biases. So I'll just pause and say, as an observer, you're coming in on your own. We do not coordinate observers. We don't schedule you. We also don't change the timing of the work that we do to accommodate any individual schedule, right? We are open for the public. And so if you're able to join us to see a particular process, we try to do our best to communicate with you when those activities are going to start, when they're going to finish, on which days and which activities. And we'll have much more information on that as a little bit later in the slideshow. But it's not possible for everyone to be everywhere all at once all the time. So, we will continue on. We do have to maintain that efficiency. We have to get through processing hundreds of thousands of ballots every election within a specified time frame. So we'll talk more about that. I'd just like to make a note there. Okay, so there's a handful of slides, but they're all very simple. We're just going to go through some of the rules for our observers. There are several rules, but they're very easy to follow, and I think they're very common sense. So first things first, when you arrive, we're going to ask you to check in and provide you a badge that lets you know that you're an observer. Sometimes the parties like to provide individuals to come and observe the process. So this little badge here might say if you're a Republican observer or a Democratic Party observer, or if you have no affiliation. We have a lot of community organizations and schools that love to come in and see the work that we do. But we do have a check-in station and those badges for everyone.
Duncan, can I just chime in real quick about the check-in?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the reasons that we do ask you to check in is in case there is an emergency, we can contact you. Our check-in station collects either a cell phone or an email. And if you're on the floor and we're going through an emergency, I can send out a blast notification to all the observers to keep them apprised of the situation. So that is one of the reasons why we ask you to check in.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. Sorry, I was having a little technical difficulty getting myself unmuted. All right. Next, we like to say, observe, don't disturb. So observers may not disrupt or interfere with the elections process. So examples of interference might include obstructing the path of voters or staff, engaging in conversation with voters or staff, any sort of electioneering by wearing campaign items while observing. We want everybody participating to remain neutral while they're in our space. And this also includes if you visit and observe at one of our Dropbox locations. So do not electioneer, do not engage with voters or impede their access to the Dropbox. Observing is really just that. You are there to watch what is going on, not participate in the process. If you want to participate in the elections process, we do, as mentioned at the beginning, hire many seasonal employees to do a variety of different jobs within our office, and we can always use more hands. So feel free to keep an eye on our job postings. They are paid, but when you're here working for us, we ask that everybody participate in a nonpartisan manner. So that said about not disturbing, we do ask that you reserve questions for designated staff only. So when you're here observing, you'll be introduced to the area leads when you arrive. And many or most people working here are seasonals. So they're not really trained to answer questions. They're really taught on a very, narrow, specific piece of what they're working on. And they're there to get through their work as efficiently and accurately as possible. So again, only address questions to the designated employee. Of course, here we also have County Auditor Garth Fell, our Chief Deputy Auditor, Alex Peterson, our Elections Manager, Matthew Pangburn, kind of the top names you can always connect with. Wendy Mouch is our Elections Supervisor. She's also someone, and then again, we have the designated leads in each of the processing areas that you would be introduced to when you come and observe the process. I'm going to pause also. We have a new space. I'm really excited about it. We're going to talk more about it here soon. But some of that interaction is probably going to look a little bit different in the new space. So for the couple of folks that have observed the process before, some of the things are going to look a little bit different, and I'll talk through that as we get to those sections here in our presentation. So no touching. Observers are not able not to touch employees, envelopes, ballots, machinery, equipment, supplies, anything else. So hands to yourself, walk through, observe the process. Eyes only is kind of the good way to think about that. And then we ask that you stay in the designated areas. So designated areas allow observers to observe all election processes, but they also provide staff the space to work comfortably. And you'll see, we'll talk a little bit how that's changed just recently. And then to ensure security, the elections office does have a strict policy prohibiting the use of any device or technology for photography, filming, or audio recording while you're observing or here for a public tour. We are working with live ballots. So we have ballot return envelopes, voted ballots, other pieces that are being processed in our area. And, every voter has a right to private information. So we really restrict the use of cell phones and other electronic equipment while you're here with us. All right, and then no food or drink. I think this is pretty common sense. We just don't want any spills or accidents that could damage equipment or mess up any ballots. Obviously, a closed lid water bottle is allowed as long as it's just kept away from the work areas. This one just continues to make sense going forward. We need all the help we can get here during our big election season. Obviously, 2024 being a presidential election is our highest turnout election, every cycle. And so while the COVID emergency and those mandates have ended, we do ask that if you are sick, that you please stay home. And then again, as I mentioned at the top here, the auditor does have the authority to limit observers at any time. And your attendance to this information session does give you that priority should we need to limit the number of observers. And of course, if any observer or visitor cannot follow the rules that we've just laid out, they will be asked to leave the facility. All right, so we're going to jump in. Here's just a quick overview of well, we're going to go into the in-depth overview of the elections process from this point forward, starting first with our high-level important dates. We're going to get into specifics on the elections processes and when certain election activities are starting later on. But in terms of our elections calendar, this is what we're looking at. June 21st, all of our military and overseas ballots were mailed. Coming up this week on July 18th, all ballots will be mailed. So all the rest of us here locally will get those put in the mail on the 18th. On July 29th, that begins the 8-day in-person voter registration period. So you can register to vote, update your voter registration, all that good stuff online up until July 29th. But on July 29th, then you have to come in person if you want to make any of those changes to your voter registration record or get registered. Then August 6th, election day, ballots must be turned in promptly by 8 p.m. There's no extension on this homework. And then on August 20th, the election is certified by our canvassing board.
All right.
Right,
So
Matthew,
I'm
I'm
going
going to kick this over to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about election security for a little bit of how we maintain our secure facility. So to us, and in general, the definition of election security means taking steps to minimize potential threats, vulnerabilities, and uncertainties that could undermine the integrity, fairness, and credibility of the electoral process. This includes being proactive and putting in place protective measures to identify and address risks so that the election can run smoothly. So some of these are just mitigation tactics. Some of these are required, but some of these are just our best practices as well. But this is how we maintain security in our new facility here. So we have restricted access. So the ballot scanning, adjudication, and tabulation areas are all separated with key cards and need two full-time employees to access these specific spaces. We are working on enhancing these measures a little bit in our new facility. So when you come on by for a tour, we can discuss that a little bit more. Per law, we use seals. So we have a unique seal on every single door, which maintains a live ballot. So in our ballot storage area, we have a seal, numbered seal, and it takes 2 people to address that. On our new facility, we also have walls and fences, gates, and we utilize that to not only protect our employees, but to also separate our spaces so that every room is designed for its own purpose. So you'll see in our new facility when you walk around our observation track, the extraction floor is designed for that specific purpose, to extract our ballots. The inbound ballot room is designed for that specific purpose. So that is how, for restricted access, that is one of the things that we really took into account into our new facility. We also have security cameras. So we have a number of security cameras throughout the floor. And these are monitored 24/7 by the sheriff's office. So these are not election record security cameras. These are just security records for the campus. But we are able to access these if we have to. And you can do a public records request for the footage, but it goes through the sheriff's office for that. But we have about a dozen or so or more cameras between our basement, first, and third floors. The tabulation center has no internet connection. So when you hear us refer to the tab center or our counting equipment, everything within that fenced room is on a closed network. Those computers have never been connected to the internet. And you can actually, in our new facility, look above you and track the wires, and you can see that there's no data cabling going into that room where the computers are connected to. So we really took into account, you can visualize everything and see that they're not connected to the internet. So ballot scanning, adjudication, tabulation equipment has never been connected to the internet. They don't have Bluetooth capability. And we actually use secured USB sticks to move files between our tabulation equipment and our computers for programming. So you want to go to next slide, Duncan? So our secured USB drives, you'll hear us talk about it. We have a one and done system where these USB sticks are provided by the Secretary of State's Security Operations Center. We get them, they come sealed, they ensure that there's no malware, adware, nothing pre-programmed on them. Once they go into our cage and they're put into those computers, they'll never go back out. Sorry, take that back. Once we use them and we put the secured USBs and we take files from our tabulation center and we put them on our, county network computers, they'll never go back into the cage. They're a one and done. We will wipe them clean with a program, software and equipment that we have, and then we send them back to the Secretary of State's office to go through the whole cycle again. So they'll wipe them clean, they'll seal them again, and then they'll put them back out in circulation. So they are a one and done. And then you'll only see us using red pens. If you're observing and you see people on the ballot processing floor or in SIG verification or any of our things, they will only be using red pens. And if they're not using a red pen, call them out. We ensure that red pens are used because voters typically don't mail their ballot back in with votes in red. So we use red pens to ensure that we are not doctoring any ballots.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. We'll hear from Matthew again a little bit later. I'd like to bring him in on a lot of the security apparatus, since he works with that much more closely than I do. So right here, this is one thing I like to just mention before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts of the elections process. So ballot versus ballot return envelope. So most of the time, I think for a lot of folks in the general public and even within our office at times, the terms might get used interchangeably. So someone may say, "Did you sign your ballot?" Well, you don't actually sign your ballot. You sign your ballot return envelope. But I think we all understand what is being asked if somebody asked if you signed your ballot. That ballot itself cannot be tracked to you as an individual, but your ballot return envelope has a barcode that connects that envelope to you. So once those two pieces are separated in our ballot processing area, there's no way to pull out an individual ballot and really tie that back to a particular voter. In fact, I like to share that there are laws that allow us to consolidate vote totals in precincts where there were so few ballots returned that it could potentially show how a particular voter voted. If there was a precinct and I'm the only one who voted, and you go and pull voter registration records and see the results for that precinct, you would know how I voted. So the election laws allow us to then take my single vote in that precinct, kind of roll it up with other precincts, again, to protect the anonymity of how I voted as a voter. I also like to talk about ballot status. So this is something we'll talk about a couple of times as we go forward. These are terms that we use for various statuses of the ballot. Any registered voter can access their ballot status by going to votewa.gov, the URL at the bottom there. You can sign in with your first name, last name, and date of birth, and then check your ballot status. And so these are the various statuses as well as the meaning. So if your ballot's been sent, it's on its way to you. If it's been received, and again, we'll talk about what these kind of mean in practical terms as we go forward, your ballot's been received by our office. If it's been accepted, that means we've reviewed the signature on your ballot return envelope, and we have affirmatively matched that to the signature on your voter registration record. And finally, if we cannot match the signature on your ballot return envelope to the signature or signatures we have on file for you on your voter registration record, your ballot will be in a status called challenged. And that's likely that either you forgot to sign the outside or we couldn't determine that it was a match. We'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. But we also have a new tool. So you can take a picture, if you will, of this QR code or point your camera at it. And that should open up your text message service on your phone and pre-populate it with the word vote as well as that phone number. And you can sign up for text message alerts with your ballot status. So you'll get a notification when our office receives your ballot. You'll get a second notification when we have accepted your signature. And in the case that your signature was not accepted or you forgot to sign, you'll also be notified that that's the case. We call that your signature being challenged. And you'll also get instructions on how to fix it. We do have an opportunity to fix any signature issue. So I'll come back. I have this again a little bit later, but really cool tool. We're very excited to have that. I think it helps people feel really confident that their votes are being received by our office. So next up, it's just again a little bit of background here. We're going to talk about batches. So you can think of each of these mail trays as a batch, and the mail trays color corresponds to various points in the process that those ballot envelopes are in. So trays may also have labels on them as needed. You can see there's a bunch of red ones on this rack in the bottom left image. There's a handful of different situations that they need a little extra research or what have you. So we put labels on those ones while we figure out what might be going on with that envelope. So we'll talk a little bit more about tray color as we go through this as well. All right, so a lot of background there. Again, there's a lot of stuff that goes into elections and making sure that all of our processes are secure and efficient. So we now have a couple of locations. If you've been here before, you've been to our first floor location in the Admin West building. We still have that space, but now that is just for the voter registration activities. I'll show you some photos here in a moment. But we are located 3000 Rockefeller Avenue. That's the main county campus. Our voter registration, first floor of the Admin West building. This is the exterior entrance to the Admin West building, by the way, that you're looking at. And our new ballot processing area is the third floor of the Admin West building. So same building, two different floors. Once you come in that first exterior door, this is the entrance to the voter registration area. Again, the Admin West building, first floor. And here's a picture of the new space. Disclaimer, the first floor is actually not officially open yet. We're still getting a few odds and ends finished up in this space before we're going to be taking our voter registration customer service in this area. We do have a temporary location in the customer service center, which is in the Admin East building. But I believe Monday of next week, the voter registration lobby, first floor, Admin West, will be open for business. As you head up to the third floor, this is the ballot processing entrance. So this is right off the elevators. Hang a right, you'll see our primary entrance. We have a lobby here as well. And then I kind of zoomed in. You can see this iPad on the pedestal as well as the observer rules. That's our check-in kiosk. So when we say check-in, we will have a personnel stationed at this desk. You can check in there and we'll get you set up for observing the elections process. And then this is, if you're standing at that check-in desk and you were to turn around, this is the beginning of our viewing corridor. Again, I'll be showing you different pictures of our new space as well as photos of our old space, but people actually doing the work. So you can get a sense of what that work really looks like. So those are two observer locations. We also have a number of drop boxes all throughout Snohomish County, and you can observe these. So each of these purple dots are 24/7 drop boxes. They're unstaffed except for election night. On election night, we have staff or seasonals at every location for a few hours before the drop boxes close. They help with traffic flow and then lock the boxes promptly at 8 p.m. They do also have some additional materials. If somebody had an envelope they had an issue with, they have some new envelopes and some other materials there to help voters at the drop box. But again, if you do go to observe the drop boxes, do not impede or interfere or electioneer near the drop box. You cannot ask voters to inspect signatures or envelopes being dropped off. In Washington state, voters are allowed to return ballots for others. So I can have the ballots for the people that live in my household, and I can, return all of those by myself. They don't all have to be with me. And that's not inappropriate or illegal. And then also voters who download a replacement ballot from VoteWa, they might use a regular household envelope to return, that ballot packet. So if you're there observing and you don't see kind of our standard Snohomish County purple ballot return envelope, that doesn't mean there's not a ballot in there. They might have just had to, download and print their own ballot from home because there was an issue with the one that was mailed to them. If you do go to a Dropbox location to observe and it's while they're being staffed, please let the folks know that you're there to observe. Say hello. We have great, friendly seasonal employees that work for us. They'll also have a method for you to kind of check in as being an observer at that Dropbox. We do appreciate you checking in to let us know you were out there. And our Dropbox closers, they are teams of 2, and they document the entire process from closing the ballot Dropbox to opening the door and removing the submitted ballots. Those ballots go into their own sealed tub and then are returned back to our offices. So every step that they have to perform is documented physically and digitally. In addition to the ballot drop boxes, we have accessible voting sites. So these are open the Saturday before the election, the Monday before the election, and Tuesday of election day, and they close promptly at 8 p.m. So these are called accessible voting sites. If you wanted to come observe here, the same rules do apply. But these accessible voting sites, they're not voting in person like kind of a lot of the rest of the nation thinks of voting in person. These are locations where folks can come to register. They can get a new or replacement ballot, and they can also return their ballot. We have mobile drop boxes at these locations. Voters with accessibility needs can also use our ballot marking device. And what this device does is it just allows them to mark their selections digitally, and then it prints out a ballot just like the one we receive at home, but their choices are already marked. So they don't, if you had a physical disability and you couldn't fill in the bubbles, it's a way to help you do that. You do not need to have a disability to use this site. You do not need to schedule a time to come to this site as just a voter or as an observer. Anybody is welcome. We can help you with elections questions, get you a replacement ballot, get you registered to vote. Yeah, really, really great that we have these throughout the county. This information is also included in your local voters pamphlet with the locations and operating hours for each of those locations. All right, so I'm going to bring Matthew back in here to talk to us about logic and accuracy testing.
Go ahead and go back to the first slide. So when does the election officially start for us is at the logic and accuracy test. So before we mail ballots, we need to ensure that our equipment is performing and operating correctly and efficiently. So the logic and accuracy test is performed to demonstrate the accuracy of our tabulation, our counting equipment, ahead of each and every election. So if we administer 4 elections a year, we are conducting this test 4 times a year. The LNA is open to the public, political parties, the media, representatives, and representatives from the Office of the Secretary of State. So when there is a statewide candidate or a state office, so federal offices, congressional offices, state legislature, a member of the Secretary of State's election division will come down and observe the logic and accuracy test. It is also open to candidates to watch. So typically I will send an email out to all the candidates the week before the election, inviting them, or as a reminder, inviting them, because one of my staff members has already done that weeks prior, but it's just a secondary reminder. So at the logic and accuracy test, we take a set of pre-marked ballots where we know the outcome of these ballots, and we'll run them through the tabulation system to ensure that it counts votes accurately. You can essentially think this as a dress rehearsal for our equipment. We also conduct on the same day a pre-election test to certify the accuracy of our accessible voting units. So those devices, which Duncan was just discussing at our accessible voting sites, will print ballots for you and help voters mark their ballots. But we need to ensure that the touchscreens are calibrated correctly so that they are where they are touching, that ballot is being marked correctly. So we do that as a separate test the same day before the official logic and accuracy test for the election equipment. The logic and accuracy test for the August primary was just last week. Some of the people in attendance were here, so I appreciate you coming again to this. So it was conducted July 10th, and we have yet to schedule the November logic and accuracy test. But if you're interested in observing that process, we will have the dates on our website as we get closer to the November election. So how do we know what ballots to mark? We create a matrix. And this is just an example of the matrix that we have used in the past. These are not real candidates, obviously. These are not real positions for office, but we use this just to create how many ballots we need to mark for each individual candidate. So our test deck for this past logic and accuracy test was over 500 ballots, with the number of candidates for the governor and Senate and congressional races. Everything needs to be marked. So this predetermined pattern is dictated by state law, and the matrix is sent to the Secretary of State's office for their approval to make sure that we did everything correctly. We send it over to them to verify. And then we will go ahead and mark the ballots according to this matrix. And we will use this matrix to certify the results at the logic and accuracy test. So we create our test ballots. We are marking ballots. Like I said, we had over 500 in this past logic and accuracy test. Each test deck will include a overvoted ballot, a voted ballot, a blank ballot, a ballot marked with one of our accessible voting units, and a damaged ballot to be duplicated at the test. When we mark our ballots, we use a variety of writing utensils to make sure that we are always capturing the voter intent. So we're using highlighters, pens, pencils, gel pens, crayons, markers, Sharpies. I joked at our logic and accuracy test, we used blood just to make sure that we are always capturing the voter intent. Once we scan all the ballots at the test, we print the results, and we will read out loud for everyone to follow along with the results and that matrix to make sure that everything matches, and we need an exact match. So if we're expecting 30 votes for a candidate, we need to have 30 votes for that candidate. If we have 29, we need to investigate what happened. So that concludes kind of our logic and accuracy test in a nutshell. I invite you all to come in November to understand it more. It is about an hour long, and we do have question and answers during that also.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. All right. So now that all of our equipment's been verified and pre-tested and ready to go, ballots have been mailed out, hypothetically, in this situation, and folks are voting and starting to return those. The first step is what we call our inbound sorting, ballot sorting. So that used to take place down in the basement, if you ever came down and saw that previously. But now we have a new ballot sorting area up on the third floor in our new ballot processing area. So you can see, doesn't look like much right now because, again, we've not even started processing anything yet for this election. But this is a picture of that equipment through the viewing window. But I wanted to capture the sign there that tells you this is the ballot sorting area. So as you walk around our viewing corridor, there's great signage by each area letting you know what activity is going on in there. And then these huge floor-to-ceiling windows, you could probably get 2 or 3 people side by side standing in front of that window watching the process happen. So first thing, though, when ballots come in through the post office, they are delivered between 5 and 5:30 in the morning on weekdays. So it's an early one if you want to come in and watch the mail get delivered. But that process is open for observation. And then we also have ballot pickup teams. These are separate from our Dropbox closing teams. Our Dropbox pickup teams go around to all of the drop boxes on a schedule. and collect ballots from those drop boxes and bring them back directly to our office. But the drop box remains open. They are just collecting what's been deposited since the last time they were at that location. So once all of these envelopes are received, you can see these giant blue bins. You put it in that large ballot drop box. They're not really organized for us. So we have a team of people, and this step will probably still take place down in the basement when all of our ballot collection actually comes in. But all they're doing is facing the ballot. So they're making sure all the ballot return envelopes are facing the same direction. They're all right side up, so that when we run them through that scanning equipment, they're all uniform. And then here we go. So the ballot envelopes are then loaded onto and run through this sorter scanner. This is the step that triggers the received status in the voter's registration record. Like I mentioned earlier, the barcode on your ballot return envelope is tied to you. So as this ballot return envelope goes through the inbound sorter scanner, it's marked in our system as received, and that triggers that notification if you're signed up for texts, or it updates the status on VOWA if you're signing on online to look at that. If somebody had already returned a ballot, this process will actually identify any duplicate ballot return envelope, and it'll send it into a different pocket or category for retention or for further investigation. One of the reasons why this might happen is if, let's say on Friday, I move residences. So the ballot's already gone out to me at my previous address, and I have my mail forwarding on, so I receive it, and I vote it and return it because I believe that it's mine. But also at the same time, or there's some overlap, I update my voter registration address because I've moved to a new location. Depending on the exact timing, me updating my voter registration address prior to my first ballot being received means a new ballot will come out based on my new voter registration address. So maybe I have a different congressional district or a different school district. And that second ballot is actually the one that is the appropriate ballot for me. So now that one shows up, and I mark it and return it because that's the correct one. We have to figure out, why did this person send two ballots in? Was it, an attempt at illegally double voting? Or was it a situation where, two ballots got kind of crossed up in the mail, and, one of them is for a different precinct versus the previous one? It's one of the things that we will investigate. And we also work with the prosecuting attorney's office. So if there was anything nefarious with that, we will coordinate with them for any sort of additional action. But regardless, when we're looking at the inbound sort and scan, this system captures a digital image of the signature area on the outside of the envelope, and that's what's compared to the signature on the voter registration record. So this equipment does not check against the voter registration data. That's done in a separate process, and it's done by humans. It's not done electronically. And then I also want to call your attention to this received label on this, what we call pocket on the scanner, because as we go forward, yellow label, yellow tray. All the received ballot envelopes are loaded into these yellow mail trays. So they've come in, they've been marked received, they get put into a yellow tray, and they wait in these yellow trays in a secure storage area while the signature checking team verifies the voter signatures from the digital images captured when that envelope was scanned in. So then we go on to the signature verification process. So here's two of our wonderful seasonal employees doing some signature verification. This picture here is from our previous office area on the first floor, but we're now up on the third floor. I'll show you a new photo here in just a moment. But again, that inbound sorter scanner doesn't do any of the signature verification. It's our seasonal workers as well as some full-time employees, some of whom work in tandem and must agree that this is or is not a signature, a valid signature for that voter. So any signature that is marked challenged that does not match the signature on file goes through a second review by our most experienced full-time staff signature verifiers. And then we also do an audit of accepted signatures to ensure the accuracy of our seasonal staff. I think it's also worth noting our seasonal staff, we're not just pulling them in off the street and plunking them down in these chairs and saying, hey, tell us if these signatures match. We do have standards, we do have trainings, and we do a lot to work with them to train them up and understand what a signature match is. And then I'll also say, I think the vast majority of our signature checkers have been coming back to us for years. And so they're quite experienced in and of themselves. But ultimately, if there is a challenge, our full-time staff are reviewing that as well. So here we go. This is the new signature verification area on the third floor. You can see the stations where they would be working inside the space. There's a little informational poster on signature verification. And again, we're not live and doing anything here quite yet, but you can see all of these monitors up above that informational poster. Once we are in the signature verification time period and we're doing that activity, the monitors where the individuals are doing the signature verification inside the secure space will be duplicated out to these monitors in the hallway. So you can actually look at the same signatures on the screen that are being verified live. Okay, so with that, you're gonna have to bear with me here. I'm juggling a couple of things on one screen, but just for the fun of it, nobody's gonna be held to account. I wanna see if you can tell us what the signature match is here. So where are we? First poll signature verification question 1. All right. I hope folks can see this, but go ahead, let me know. What do you think? The original at the top there, Thanksgiving. Is A the same signer? Is B the same signer? Or is C the same signer? Or none of the above? Uh-oh, did I wait too long in between polls? I'm not seeing any responses. Oh, we don't see the poll, says Matthew. Okay, give me just a moment. All right, signature verification 1. Here we go. Hopefully you can see this now. All right, I got a couple of folks saying it's A. Anybody disagree? All right, there's good number of feedback there, so we'll go ahead and move forward. But everybody says A. All right, let me go back here. And there we go. A. That is the correct answer. So I'm going to stop sharing that one. We'll go back here. How about this one? Any trickier? A, B, or C, or none of the above?
You can move the window, the pop-up window, if you need to have a comparison as you have the poll question.
All right, I'm seeing some good responses. I'm going to end that and share the results. We got one person that said none of the above. Most everybody else thought it was B, and that's right, B. B was the correct answer. So I'll stop sharing that there. I appreciate you all entertaining me. I hope you're finding that kind of fun to take a look at. But that's just a couple of the practice kind of words that we will use when we're being trained on how to identify signature verification. It's way more in depth. It's oftentimes an hour and a half training each time. So You know, but you can see, you know, there's a lot that just kind of makes sense when you're looking at a signature. We're not looking for an exact carbon copy match. We're looking for a similarity between various features in a signature.
And not to get too much in depth into the training, but they're looking for different types of loops, pressure, swoops, angles. So for with the word June, you can see that while J is completely different, the N and the E are almost carbon copies. So maybe they just decided just to change the way that they do their J's for a little bit. And the people that are training our staff are former members of Washington State Patrol who do financial crimes, bank fraud, check fraud. They are expert handwriting analysts. So they are training us on how to identify similarities in signatures.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that addition, Matthew. Yeah, and one of the things that we talk about too in that is, somebody might be signing on their steering wheel or in less than ideal circumstances, or they might have, really taken their time and had a nice clean desk to do their initial voter registration signature. So things change, people get older, signatures change over time. And so we have forms as well. If folks need to update a signature, if you wanted to submit a signature update, you can do that voluntarily. And we do keep multiple iterations of your signature on file over time. So, if you, in my case, signed as Duncan Clausen one day and I signed as DC Clausen some other day, again, it doesn't have to be the exact same, but having multiple versions on file is helpful for doing that comparison. All right, so now we've done the signature comparison. Those yellow trays get scanned through in what we call the second pass. So when the signature verifiers are clicking accept or challenge on those signatures as they go through and do that review, that's notated in our voter registration system. And when these envelopes get run through a second time, it's looking to see what the note was on the record for that signature. And so accepted ballot return envelopes get put into one of these pockets, and you can see back behind this one that's in the foreground, there's a rejected or a pre-challenge. Rejected signatures, challenge signatures will get put into a different pocket, again, for further review or to allow for a voter to fix their signature issue. So I want to point you to this here too. You saw we talked about received that first time. Now we have accepted with a green label, and wouldn't you believe it? We put all of those accepted ballot return envelopes in green trays. So we put those batches into green trays. They're loaded onto racks that indicate they are ready for opening and extraction. Each tray also has a tag with the batch number and the number of envelopes in the batch. Now, each batch is typically 200 envelopes, but as we get toward the end of the day, we might have a batch or two that are slightly smaller, or as we get toward the end of the election, and there's kind of a trickle of ballots, we might go ahead and process batches that are smaller than 200, but 200 is the maximum that we like to have in each batch. And then also, I will say, for the accepted signature envelopes, when they're getting run through that sorter scanner, there's a milling device on there. So it actually mills open the bottom of the envelope so that our extraction team, when they're removing the ballots from the ballot return envelope, they don't have to slice every single envelope as well. That's just one of those efficiency pieces. So I've mentioned it a few times, but I want to hit on it again because I don't want anybody to feel like their voice is not heard. If your signature is challenged, you forgot to sign, your signature doesn't match, that's okay. We can cure your signature. So voters do have time and opportunity to fix their signature challenge. Again, we use the term cure to describe fixing that signature regardless of the reason. And we do notify voters. We send them a letter in the mail letting them know that there was a signature issue. If there's a phone number on file, we'll call them. If there's an email address on file, we'll send you an email. Again, now we have those text messages to notify voters of any sort of issue with their signature. And then we also have been partnering the last couple of elections with the League of Women Voters to send a handwritten postcard, something a little bit, unique to try and catch your eye in the mail, let you know that there's been an issue and where you can find more information to resolve that. Ballots cannot and will not be tabulated if the signature cannot be verified. We will not remove the ballot from the ballot return envelope until we can verify that signature. And voters have until the day before the election is certified to complete and return that cure form. So another reason why it pays to vote early. You get that ballot, if you know who you're voting for, fill it out, get it back to us. If you need to take a couple of days to research the candidates and before you mark that ballot and get it back to us, go for it. But the earlier you get that back to us, the more time you have to fix any sort of signature discrepancy. And also, I just have a note here to mention that, at the end of the day, we're looking at less than 1% of ballots returned that remain challenged and uncounted after an election. So it's a very small number of ballots at the end of the day that have issue. But we would love to get that number down as low as possible, get it to 0 if we can. We want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to have their vote be counted. So with that, I have this one more time. You can scan this, sign up for the text message alerts. I think it's a super cool tool. Encourage everybody to use it. You're not going to get spammed with other messages. This is really just to help you have that confidence that your ballot's been received by our office and to know that your signature has been verified when it's been verified. So once we go through all of that, the signatures have been checked and loaded onto the trays, we bring them up into our ballot processing area where the envelopes are opened, the ballots are removed and inspected and prepared to go on to scanning and tabulation. So this is our new space. It's big and open. As Matthew said, we don't have any drop ceilings like we had in the old space. So you can see where all the conduit and wires are going. There's clear lines of sight. You can see that there's no opportunity to have things hiding up in the ceiling. Anyhow, so each batch has a tracking sheet with the number of ballots that are in that batch, who opened the batch, and areas on that tracking sheet to document any discrepancies. And what we might mean by discrepancy is if there was an envelope returned with no ballot in it, or if there was an envelope returned with 2 ballots in it. Things like that happen. Some folks believe that you have to vote in every single election in order to maintain your voter registration. That's not true, but we do want everybody to vote in every election. But some folks will return a ballot return envelope with no ballot in it so that they get counted as having, returned their ballot, even though they did not. And also things happen. Husband and wife, maybe one of them, they spilled a coffee on their return envelope and they go, oh, we'll just stuff both of them into one envelope. Again, not preferred. We can get you replacement envelopes. We can get you a new ballot. Contact our office. We can help you with that. But these things do happen, and we have to plan for those and know how to handle them and to track them when they happen. So that's just some of the things that we keep an eye on and make note of. Before anything is actually removed from that ballot return envelope, though, we first count the number of envelopes in the batch and confirm that that matches what's on the tracking sheet. So if my batch says it has 200 envelopes, I'm going to do a hand count and make sure that there are 200 envelopes in that tray before I move forward. Once the ballots are removed from the envelopes, those envelopes are actually removed from the table and put into a box on the floor, and that breaks the connection between the voted ballot and the voter, so they can no longer be linked together. And then the physical ballots are inspected for any sorts of cuts or tears or things that might create a jam in the scanning equipment. If it's cut or torn, we may fix it with just your standard clear cellophane tape. If part of the ballot is missing, we'll put that into a separate envelope and put that on the top of the batch so that if there is an issue with the scanning equipment, reading that ballot because the timing marks have been destroyed, it's more easy to find those issues when they're put at the top of the batch rather than being stuck in the middle of 200 ballots. And again, any discrepancy, those tears, those issues, anything that's been, set on top of the batch to make sure that it scans appropriately, those are all tracked on our batch tracking sheets. So right here, I just wanted to show you a picture. This is what it looks like when folks are actually doing that work. The green trays, the stacks of ballots. So this is what our new space is going to look like when we get up and running here after ballots mail out. Once the ballots have been counted, again, the envelopes are set aside, the secrecy sleeves are set aside, the ballots themselves are put into these brown cardboard boxes and sent over to the scanning area to be scanned into the ballot tabulation system. Each batch has its own tabulation box, and the return envelopes are marked with the batch number and stored in a separate box for retention. Same with the secrecy sleeves. They go into a separate box that contains the batch numbers that they came from. And again, that's, if there were ever a question or an issue, we can go back and find that stack of envelopes and re-inspect that as needed. Here's the ballot scanning area. Again, you can see lots of big windows all around, so you can see what's going on. Here's a picture of our old scanning area in the cage. This was on the first floor, but we also have a cage on the third floor, and that scanning equipment is similarly in a cage on the third floor now. Last but not least, here's a closer image of what our scanning equipment looks like. These see both sides of the page, see both sides of the page and capture an image of both sides of the page as well. Each ballot starts off with a target card that tells the system the batch number that's being scanned. And then the tracking sheet from the processing area follows the batch to the scanning area. So the scanning equipment can count how many pages are scanned in each batch and verify that the number hand counted in the processing area matches the number of ballots scanned. And then just to be clear, the system captures images of the ballots, but it's not counting the votes yet. Votes are not counted until 8 p.m. on election night. And that actually requires us doing some additional work to take the scanned images from the kind of image side of our tabulation system and move them digitally over to the tabulation side to be counted. So it's actually a physical step we have to take in order to make that happen. And then also, just a reminder from what Matthew was telling us earlier around our security measures, all of these components are linked to a server in our space. So neither the scanning equipment nor the server that's in that space are connected to the internet. That server in the space is its own isolated, piece of equipment. It doesn't communicate externally at all. When we need to actually take the results and publish them to the web or send them to the state, that's where we use those secure USBs. We take the seal off, we put that into the server that's in the cage. We take those tabulated results and put it on that secure USB, and then we move that out, and then I'll plug that into, say, my computer that I'm here with you on that's internet connected, upload those results to the Secretary of State's office or upload those to our website, and then that USB stick is more or less discarded. It's sent back into a process to be cleaned and wiped and resealed, but it never, after going in my computer, goes, right back into the tabulation system. And now we get into adjudication, probably one of the more interesting pieces of the elections process. And I have a couple more polls coming up, so some more interaction that I hope you all get a chance to enjoy. So any ballot that cannot be read by the scanning equipment, that's those timing marks are damaged, or if there's a mark for more than one candidate, which we call an overvote, or there's no mark for any candidate, call that an undervote, or if there's some other situation or scenario where the digital scanning equipment cannot interpret the voter's intent, we have to review that by humans, and if necessary, modify how the tabulation system interprets that vote. So that whole process, we call that adjudication, kind of a 50-cent word there. But this work is always done in teams of 2. And then let's say Matthew and I, we review a batch of ballots, we adjudicate those. We tell the system we had to make a couple of changes. After we're done, a separate team of 2 that contains neither Matthew or myself reviews the work that we did to ensure that we didn't make any errors, either intentional or unintentional, in that adjudication process. And so this is the new adjudication area. You can see the scanning equipment in the background there, but this is inside of the cage. And here's kind of what that adjudication station looked like in the past. So 2 members sitting next to each other, reviewing a ballot and making those selections. Similarly to our signature verification area where those screens are duplicated, so you can watch what our staff are doing in the signature verification, we do the same thing with our adjudication. I just don't have a photo of it from the new space. But in the old space, you can actually watch what the adjudication team is doing. You can see them reviewing the ballots. If they have to adjudicate any of the votes, you can watch what they're doing while they're doing it. And I'll just kind of zoom in a little bit so you can see kind of that's what the scanned image of the ballot looked like. These ones are what we call the My Ballots. So if you print a ballot from home, it looks a little bit different than the one that was mailed to you. And sometimes those are harder to read by our tabulation system. So they need a second review. And just so you know, it's not just Matthew and I sitting there making decisions all willy-nilly on what is a vote. We actually have a statewide standard. So in Washington state, we are a voter intent state. Essentially what that means is that voting is not a test. If you either choose not to or don't follow the instructions in terms of filling in the bubble on your ballot and you instead decide to circle the entire name of the choice that you want to make, as long as your voting pattern is consistent throughout your whole ballot, we will go through and review those and count them based on the guidelines in the voter intent manual. It's like about 84, 85-page book with a number of scenarios of how people have marked and returned ballots in the past, and what the rules are on how to adjudicate those votes. So really, we are committed. We're committed to, and we're also required to make every effort ensure that each valid vote is counted. Again, Washington state is a voter intent state, which means voters are not disenfranchised if they mark a ballot differently than directed by the instructions on the ballot. So when voter intent can be discerned, that vote will be counted. The voter intent guide does illustrate the standards of what is a vote and how non-standard marks should be interpreted. And then, needless to say, no guide can anticipate every possible variation, but in cases where the situation is not addressed in state law or administrative rule or the voter intent guide, the authority to determining voter intent is actually vested with the canvassing board. So not me, not Matthew, not our adjudication team, not our ballot processing lead. We don't ever make a final determination to say this or this is not a valid vote, but we apply all the standards that are available to us. And if we say this is not a valid vote, or we believe this is not a valid vote, that's not the end. We present all of the information to the canvassing board, who are also trained on this information, and they ultimately make the decision as to whether or not that vote can be counted. So you can find the voter intent guide online, or feel free to email me or reach out to our office. We can provide that to you as well if you're interested in looking at what that has to say. So with that, though, lots of good stuff. I'm gonna pop my screen out here and launch another poll. So let's see, what is a vote? Question 1. Here we go. So if you're looking at this ballot that was marked, Who do you think that's a vote for? Abigail S. Adams, William Henry Harrison, or none of the above? All right, I'll count us down if you're holding out. 3, 2, 1. All right. So here's what folks thought. We had what does it look like? 3 votes for Abigail S. Adams, 1 vote for none of the above. The answer is, get my screen up here, overvote. It's actually none of the above. This would be a vote for no candidate. I'll stop sharing the poll there. But I really like this one, and I really appreciate when people put the Abigail S. Adams as the answer. I think it shows, really thinking hard about it. I won't ask anybody to out themselves on this occasion, but in the past, I had a person say they thought it was Abigail Adams because that bubble was more completely filled in, which is a great way to think about it. I really appreciate that answer. But according to the statewide rules, this is somebody who had made 2 selections. They did not strike through either of the selections to let us know which one was the vote that they truly intended. So this would be considered an overvote, voting for 2 candidates. And unfortunately, that's not allowed. So on to the next one. Let's see here. Launch my next poll. What is a vote? Here we go. James Monroe, Alicia Ferry, Clara Barton, write-in, none of the above. All right, getting some good responses. Anybody else want to weigh in before I end it? One more in there. All right. Let me go ahead and end that poll. Share the results. Everybody says none of the above. And you're right. It is none of the above. This is what we, in our words, call an undervote. So this person, in this hypothetical example, chose not to participate in this contest. They marked no candidate, and no votes will be counted for this voter for that particular race because they did not mark it. I'll just quickly pause and say overvotes and undervotes don't count for any candidate in a race. However, we do report the number of overvotes and undervotes in each race. And that's one of those things that we adjudicate on a regular basis. Did somebody leave it blank? Did they actually leave it blank? Did they actually, vote for more than one candidate? And so I have one more here for you. Pop this open. All right, this is the last one. Won't make you all work too hard on these, but oh goodness, I'm also seeing I don't have enough choices in there for you all. That's my bad. I apologize, folks. I suppose it doesn't actually really matter. Teddy and Abigail are kind of out on this one. So I'm going to end this poll. I'll share the results. We got confidence 6 out of 6 here. That is William Henry Harrison. And on that one, yes, in fact, we would count that vote for William Henry Harrison. However, the tabulation system could potentially see this as an overvote because that one mark of the X goes down into the write-in bubble. Even though the write-in line is left blank, the tabulation system is really just looking for marks inside of the bubbles. So this would be something that the adjudication system might flag as an overvote, say you voted for more than one candidate, and our team would have to look at it, apply the rule Q in this case, and say, no, this is a messy mark. This is somebody that clearly intended to vote for William Henry Harrison, and we're going to make sure that that vote counts for them. Other situations we see are sometimes like what gets called a hesitation mark. So if I had set my pen down on Teddy Roosevelt and it left a little dot of ink in the bubble for Teddy Roosevelt, but I in fact put an X by William Henry Harrison, the system's going to say, I'm not confident that this is, a vote for William Henry Harrison. And it'll let us know, and we can review it as people, because machines are fallible. All right, that said, I think I'm going to bring Matthew back on here to talk a bit about our election audits.
Right. So we talked about, Duncan just went over all the ways that we can interpret votes and imply voter intent rules. But when it comes to our post-election audits, we are actually looking at the ballots themselves. We are not looking at images of the ballots. We will physically go and pull either full batches to hand count or individual ballots to count. We conduct 2 post-election audits here in Snohomish County as a best practice. Conducting only one of the following is required by law, but we do both. So we have what we call the random batch audit. This is the first audit that we do. It's typically held the day after the election day. The political party chairs will choose 6 batches at random, and we will physically count those individual ballots and make sure that what was our tabulation system reported matches the contents of that box. So if we're looking for in a batch of 200 and we have 150 votes for candidate A and 50 votes for candidate B, that's what our teams are going to be counting. They work independently, each person. So they are not talking amongst themselves saying, hey, I have 150, do you have 150? No, they're each counting independently. And then they will show the supervisor, who will then verify their work. So if the person on the left has 150 and the person on the right has 149, we're going to tell them that their numbers don't match and that they need to resort their ballots and recount. So that's one way of which we verify election results. We also perform what we call a risk limiting audit. And this is typically conducted the week following the election. And this is a statistical sample of all the ballots in the entire election. So we are randomly pulling however many ballots the program that we're using tells us to pull to verify that what the results are. So we're looking for, they're going to randomly sample all the ballots in the election, and we are looking to say, okay, on this ballot, you should have these candidate choices marked according to the tabulation software. Is that what is physically on these ballots when we individually pull them? So this is just a statistical sample of all the ballots. It's kind of the same principles as a financial audit, but heavily math involved. And that's the 2 methods which we do for post-election results auditing.
Thank you, Matthew. All right. So we're kind of at the end of our process here. I got a few more things I want to share with you just about when you're observing, where to get more information, and I'll quickly run through our upcoming observer opportunities. But yeah, when you're observing, if you see something, say something. We really, we feel we do a fantastic job to meet the letter of the law and make sure everyone's vote that is eligible to cast a vote is counted. So, but if you see something that appears to not follow the rules and regulations, say something to one of our designated staff so we can investigate that. We want everybody to be confident that we are doing the best job possible here in Snohomish County. So when you're observing, I think I might have mentioned this at the outset, but before you get here, think about what you want to see. It's kind of a lot to see everything, and some of the activities may or may not be taking place on that day. So if you want to see the envelope scanning component of it, plan on getting here pretty early to see that mail come in and watch the envelopes get scanned into the system. If you want to be here doing signature checking, you can always reach out to our office. We have kind of a designated day and time that we anticipate that activity is going to start. But depending on turnout, whether folks are voting early or not voting early, or where we're at in the election process, we may be doing signature checking all day long, or we may only be doing it for a few hours in the morning and then coming in the afternoon, that activity's been done for the day. So you can always reach out to our office, let us know what you're interested in, and we can do our best to give you a rundown of when that activity will be taking place so you can come in and observe that. So again, there's the list of activities. Think about what you want to check out, but always feel free to communicate with us if you want to double check that what you want to see is going to be happening on the day that you want to be here. Also, educate yourself. We have great information on our website, snoco.org/elections. And then again, please just don't assume anything. If you don't understand the process that you're observing or something looks out of whack, stop us. We'd love to have the opportunity to talk about it. And if something is looking like it's not happening the way that it should be, that gives us an opportunity to address it much more quickly. So we really appreciate that as well. Additional information you can find, observer rules when you're signing in. We'll have a handout for you. snoco.org/elections. We have great election information as well as frequently asked questions on there. votewa.gov, fantastic resource. You can verify your voter registration information, check your ballot status, view your voter's guide, and also get yourself a replacement ballot if you needed one. And then last but not least, sos.wa.gov, the Washington State Secretary of State's office. Tons of fantastic information at that site. So real quick, that logic and accuracy test that Matthew talked about, that did take place back on July 10th. We did the logic and accuracy test for our accessible voting units as well as for our tabulation system on July 10th. But coming up on July 23rd, our signature verification will begin at 11 a.m. is our anticipated start time. Then on July 31st is when we'll begin opening and inspecting those ballots. And on August 1st is when we'll begin scanning the ballots into the tabulation system. From there, on August 2nd, we'll begin ballot adjudication, 8:30 a.m. August 5th, the day before the election, is when the parties come in and actually select the random batches for that random batch audit that takes place after Election Day. August 6th, we actually tabulate the ballots at 8 p.m. For the most part, I think we want to have those initial results published by 5 or 10 minutes after 8, but it can be a little bit longer than that depending on how things are going, but we like to get those right after 8 p.m. And again, just to clarify, those are initial results. Final results are not until we certify the election on August 20th.
And I will say we always post to our website first. So if you're on the Secretary of State's website, there is a delay in posting because all 39 counties are trying to post at the same time so that there is a caching going on. So if you're looking for immediate results on election night, please go to our website first. Typically, they will be up around 8:05.
Excellent, thank you. And then the random batch audit actually takes place at 10 a.m. on August 7th. So August 5th, the parties select the batches. August 7th is when we actually perform the audit. August 19th is our initial canvassing board meeting. I will say not in my list here. There is another canvassing board date that we have reserved kind of on an as needed basis. But the full PDF of all the observer opportunities is on our website. And you can always, reach out to us to see if there's other things going on that you want to be a part of. And then last but not least, August 20th, the canvassing board certifies the election at 1 p.m. So this is my last slide. I'd just like to leave this information up here. Some key websites for getting more information. And then I'd